it's definitely a takeable district.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I know you guys have some ballot measures, quite a few going on for 2018. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those.
Well, I mean, there's one in particular I think that needs to be mentioned. It's the non-unanimous jury ballot initiative. So right now, Louisiana is one of only 2 states in the entire country that allows criminal convictions with a non-unanimous jury. So it requires only a 10-2 guilty or non-guilty verdict to send someone to jail, potentially sentence them to death here in Louisiana. And the state legislature during the last session passed a bill that would undo that. It's going straight to the voters. I think that there is a tremendous amount of support behind passing this. We see it as sort of a vestige of slavery in Jim Crow laws, which it clearly is. The Republican attorney generals are apparently against this. I'm not really sure why. I guess the district attorneys are also somewhat against it, but it's enjoyed widespread bipartisan approval. You've got the religious right that's coming out in favor of this. Believe it or not, the Koch brothers are coming out in favor of doing away with this. Yeah. And of course you have a lot of, progressive organizations and the ACLU and other organizations that have worked behind the scenes to make this a reality for a long, long time. So that would be the key one. I'm sure that there's a bunch of different millage renewals and stuff that are also very critical, but that's the big one.
Is there anything else that you think we should be talking about with Louisiana politics? Any sort of big stories that we're missing?
For me, the craziest thing is how closely connected Louisiana politicos are with the Russia investigation. That could be a subject for an entirely different podcast. But yeah, we've got Steve Scalise, who's the House Majority Whip, who's intimately involved in a bunch of different narratives here. The lawyers for Maria Butina, they're from New Orleans, or the financing at least was from a guy whose company's here in New Orleans. Lawyers for these companies are here in New Orleans. It's multiple connections, and it's sort of strange. We have Russian people that were here, Russian nationals that were here that are indicted now in 2014 to spy or to collect intelligence on our electoral system. I don't think you'll find any other state other than maybe New York that has more connections to this ongoing investigation than Louisiana does.
Do you think that anyone is paying attention? I mean, other than people like you who pay a lot of attention to these kinds of things, but do you think that the voters are paying much attention to
I don't know, and I'm not even sure it matters to the voters here, I guess the other thing I would say is that, going back to what you said earlier, we're not as deep ruby red as folks think we are. I mean, Netroots Nation was here about a week ago, and I got to talk to Danica Rome from Virginia, and she described Danica described Virginia as the opposite of Louisiana. She said it was very Republican on a local level and very Democratic on a statewide level, which is probably accurate. And Louisiana is the exact opposite. So I think there's more of a potential for a Democratic insurgence here than there is in many other states. And, our governor is a Democrat, but he's also the 6th most popular governor in the entire country. And I think we've got a lot of room to grow here. And I think we've got a lot of really quality progressives here. We're very fortunate. We probably have too many good candidates running in races right now because we don't have a closed primary system. They will be shut out forever, at least in this cycle. And it's unfortunate. So, but don't be discouraged.
Well, I guess my final thought is that I'm in Illinois, which is known for corrupt politics, but we always say, yes, but Louisiana is more corrupt.
I don't know, though.
So is it true? Is Louisiana?
I don't know. I thought you guys had more governors that have been in jail recently than we've had. Well,
sure. But I mean, that's only the governors.
Today is Edwin Edwards' 91st birthday. And he's our only 4-term governor. He's a guy that was spent 8 years in federal prison for, I guess, 21 different counts, and then got out at the age of, I think, 84, 85, married a 35-year-old woman, and is now the father of a 5-year-old child. Today's his 91st birthday. So there's second chances here. But I think we probably have you beat on the number of politicians currently serving in prison.
Okay, well, both of y'all are going to have to get behind Northeastern Ohio, where when I was growing up, we literally had an indictometer on the side of the road that would go up depending on the number of politicians that were indicted that week. And my congressman became the only person since the Civil War to be expelled from Congress for corruption.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think Northeastern Ohio is perhaps out of place in Ohio. So,
there's a former governor here, Buddy Roemer, who said half of Louisiana is underwater and the other half is under indictment. I think that still may be true.
Yeah, we've just been talking in Illinois about how we feel like there's a governor mansion to prison pipeline going on.
There really is. Do you think that Trump is going to let off Rod Blagojevich?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I think the only reason he would do it is because Obama didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only way they could sell it.
Also, Celebrity Apprentice season, whatever it was, he was on.
I mean, I think that Blagojevich was clearly guilty, clearly deserved to go to prison. I think his sentence was way longer than it needed to be, and way longer compared to other Illinois governors who've been sent to prison for things that are really much worse. So I'd be okay with the sentence being commuted. I don't think he should be pardoned, but I'd be okay with the sentence being commuted.
It's an interesting point, because here in Louisiana, again, Edwin Edwards, same thing. People thought that he needed to go to prison for what he did, but that the sentence was way too long. And there was actually a bipartisan coalition of people who petitioned and urged President George W. Bush to pardon him or commute his sentence. It fell on deaf ears, but that coalition included George W. Bush's own father, who believed that Edwin Edwards should deserve a pardon or a commutation.
Yeah, I think Obama was in a bit of a rough spot trying to, I don't know if he had any interest in commuting it, but I don't think he really could have, since it involved his Senate seat, that Blagojevich had been trying to sell off. So I think that really it would have been too weird and icky for him to be the one to commute. But I'm sure Trump could be convinced. He'd just have to say the right combination of words to him at the right moment, and he'd just sign some piece of paper. All right. Well, Lamar, thank you so much. It's really terrific to talk to someone who's such an expert in Louisiana politics. And
I try to be. Yeah.
Seems like a really interesting place. I've only ever been to New Orleans, but maybe I'll come back and see some of the rest of Louisiana.
There's a lot of good stuff to see. There really is. It's a great state.
Are you looking? Oh, I should need it. Are you not listening? Are you just repeat it? Are you not looking? Oh, I should need it.
Welcome back to Two Broads Talking Politics. I am one of your co-hosts, Sophie, and as usual, I'm here with your other co-host, Kelly. Hey, Kelly.
Hello.
And tonight we have with us Justin DeWitt. He is running for Congress from Louisiana's 6th Congressional District. Welcome, Justin.
Oh, thank you for having me on, ladies. Enjoy speaking with you today.
Thanks for joining us. We usually sort of ask our guests to kind of introduce themselves to our listeners. Who are you, and sort of how did you come to be running for Congress?
Well, I'm a 30-year-old guy from South Louisiana. I do survey work. I work for survey companies. That's land surveying. I'm worked with land surveying firms and construction survey my entire adult life. I'm married. Me and my husband got married in 2015, October, and we've been happily married since then. 2015 was a very great year for us. 2016 wasn't so great. We had massive floods in Baton Rouge in Louisiana that affected me and thousands of other people. We lost most of our possessions in our home at the time, and we had to rebuild. And that was the final straw for me in the political world, that I've always followed it, because as an openly gay person in the South, you kind of have to watch legislatures because they typically use you as a scapegoat or a distraction area throughout the years. So I've always watched politics carefully, but that's what made me put my hat in the game, because I was affected by that, and sitting in my house with the walls gutted and sitting there looking at that, and I get a letter from my congressman, Garrett Graves, saying that, he's praying for us and his thoughts and prayers are with us. But he had time to act against the flooding In Louisiana, we have that issue. This is something he should have been on the forefront of. He was not. He's reactionary. He's not proactive. And that's why I'm running against him and his corporate ties of selling out his constituents to corporate interests.
So some of our listeners might not know how politics in Louisiana works, but you guys don't have a primary, correct?
Well, they call it a primary, but here's how it works in layman's terms for people that wouldn't understand it, because it is a very difficult system. In Louisiana, you declare your candidacy, and then there's a qualifying period of 3 days in July, where the 18th through the 20th, I think it was, you sign the paperwork, you put your name on the ballot. All Democrats, all Republicans, all independents, all Green parties, everyone's on the same ballot, and they call it our primary, which is kind of a lie because it's November 6th. Everyone else goes to the polls to vote for their nominated party. We go to vote between dozens of it could be dozens of candidates. And if no one gets 50% plus one vote, the top two vote getters go to a runoff December 8th. It's an archaic and very corrupt method that was put into place in the 70s or so. It's not fair usually, and it's a way to split votes. Like, we have some business people in our state that one of them is my ex-employer that is known to buy elections. By that, I mean he will pay someone that has been known to be a Democrat or identifies as a Democrat or a Republican. He'll influence races. I'm not saying this race. I'm saying in general, like our school board races. He'll pay a so-called Democrat to enter the race and split the Democratic vote so that a Republican can get majority. If you have 49% of the district Republican and 50% Democrat, man, you just one little vote splitter to take a little bit off the top. Bam, you got a Republican elected.
Does that make it hard for the parties to really operate? In Wisconsin, we have a primary, and then after the Democratic nominee is chosen, then the Democratic Party of Wisconsin gets behind the nominee with all their money and all their, like volunteers and stuff. So how does that work if party can't necessarily get behind one candidate?
So first of all, there's in my congressional races that I'm in, there's the DSCC, which is the state level Democratic Party. Then you have the DCCC. The DCCC is without being too mean, I guess, a disgusting excuse for assistance or a party. They've abandoned the South, basically. They won't talk to any candidates. They don't promote. They don't even put it on their website unless that district's easily a flippable district or something like that. They don't care. That you call their office and they're like, well, yeah, we don't care. The state party is focused mainly on state elections, but they do help with, telling candidates what to do as far as filing your FEC reports, how to organize. They do trainings and things like that. But there's no rules or anything holding a state party back from endorsing a candidate anytime they want. I mean, a lot of people, grassroots people in Louisiana, want the Democratic Party to endorse a candidate before that qualifying period so that other Democrats can't jump in and split the vote. But they're resistant to doing that so they don't look like they're being selective of who they want to back.
So let's talk a little bit about the 6th district. So I was surprised to see that it's a fairly urban district, and has a relatively high median income for, what I would expect in southern Louisiana. But it's an R+19, and in fact, in the 2016 election, Garrett Graves got more than 50% of the vote, so it didn't have to go to a runoff, despite the fact that there were, I think, 6 people running. So can you tell us a little bit about what you see in the district and what you see as your path to victory?
My path to victory is such as the 2016 election. 2 candidates, one of them which ran a few times, those 2 candidates didn't promote themselves a lot. The reason Derek got such a great vote last time was because there's no big, huge challenger on the ticket for him. And a lot of people showed up to vote for the president's election. There's actually, if you look at the numbers if you pull the district numbers for what Garrett Graves got in the district, he massively underperformed the president. People went to vote and skipped him. They didn't care. He's not that popular. I mean, people say that R+19, that's for a generic Republican or a Republican that's popular. Half the people don't even know who Garrett Graves is. Also, Garrett can't identify with a district like I can because, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but this man went to college for 5 or 6 years or so, 3 different ones, and never graduated. And he had his father came from money, so he was able to, not have student loans from that. Me, I had to go to work. And I worked, and I still do. I'm still working 40 hours a week while I'm running for office. But the district is also gerrymandered horrifically. By that, I mean they have drawn, if you look at Louisiana's 6th district, the Louisiana 6th District and Louisiana's 2nd District, they run along each other. What they did was they drew from middle of New Orleans, reaches all the way up to Baton Rouge, which is over 60,